Just a quick introduction to Miko. From previously managing digital accounts at MRM McCann, Miko now heads AIA Philam Life's digital marketing team, tackling brand building to performance marketing initiatives. He oversees the Philippines' premier insurance company's digital content, paid distribution, performance marketing measurement, and marketing technology. Truly, digital is his passion because he also serves as a lecturer in the leading provider for digital training, Certified Digital Marketer. So I think if the title is Notes from the MarTech Battlefront, then what better way to learn than from the general who's also a professor? So on that note, Miko, the stage is all yours. Welcome. Thanks again for doing this with us today.
Hey Subra. Hi everyone. Thanks also for the opportunity. Really happy to be here. Hold on, let me just prepare. Just want to check, Subra, is my screen showing up properly?
Yes, yes, you are. Yeah,
Okay,
you
great,
can go.
great. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. For those in Southeast Asia, really happy to be here, and I thank the Lemnis team for inviting me to have this opportunity to share my experience and hopefully impart some personal notes to actually help you progress your marketing technology or martech journeys wherever maturity level you are. We've been working with Subra and team for more than one and a half years now, right, Subra? So I hope all the things that we've collected, the insights, good things and bad things we've learned from the experience will really help you move forward. These points, hopefully, are you'll find it insightful, but at the same time actionable, regardless of again where you are in terms of journey or digital marketing maturity. Okay, so I guess before I go into the notes, the specific notes I want to impart today, it would be best first to really set the context properly, so you'll be able to understand it from my lens or where our team's actually coming from. So like what Subred said earlier, I sit under the digital marketing team, and usually when you talk about digital marketing, we usually refer to this very old device but still very relevant, which is the marketing funnel. And as part of the digital marketing team, usually it's really catering across objectives, departments, and different P&Ls, whatever campaigns that's being briefed on. It's something that we worked on, and especially with the times that we have today, digital marketing is really the preferred channel and the preferred platform in almost all platforms, right? And I think to just to quote the discussion earlier with Ram, Gigi, and Eugene, is that it's all about picking the signals. May it be signals across awareness, consideration, or if you want to use the Google language of see, think, do, and care. Definitely, digital marketing actually sits and it really caters almost end to end of it, right? But behind the scenes, actually, things that our team are also delivering, or we are actually also juggling a lot of these things. Now we have so many digital marketers in the audience today, so I guess you would agree that beneath the surface of digital marketing as a discipline, you know that there are sub disciplines, not only in support of the campaigns but also the bigger company strategic imperatives as well, or sometimes we call it always on or business as usual. So in a day, most likely you'll be juggling between campaigns, BAU work or business as usual work, or strategic things that is also equally urgently needed, right? So that's really a role of a digital marketer. It's multidiscipline, but as well as cross-functional and again cross-funnel. So all of these things really sits well in the perspective when we first met or encountered a CDP, because later on you'll see that if not all of these pieces will really benefit if you're able to actually maximize a CDP. And earlier, Subra also mentioned that these are the things I do in a work sense, on a professional capacity, but actually even on the weekends, I also teach. No? In select weekends, around 1 to 2 Saturdays per month, I do teach in a digital training provider platform here in the Philippines. So you can really say that equally digital marketing is my profession, but at the same time, teaching and learning actually are my vocation. So, without further ado, I'd like to share these notes, personal things that I've written down that I realized as we went through and still going through rather the journey of our CDP and even our marketing technology journey, and it has been 1.5 years with the Lemnis team. Some are quite basic at first glance, but for me, and I hope you agree, it made me really think further how we should approach this vis-a-vis the bigger picture. Whatever bigger picture you're talking about, may it be your company's OKRs, or your company's strategic imperatives. So all of these things you really have to embrace. And I hope you'll find these insightfuls again equally insightful and actionable as well. So we'll be talking about what is a CDP and what it is not. I think there's a lot of discussions, and I myself, first encountering it, I was really confused on what it is compared to the other SaaS tools available out there. Then we'll go through how it would be beneficial to actually select and prioritize your use case or use cases as you decide to invest time, money, and talent into a CDP. Where's the data? Earlier, a lot of discussion about democratizing data, empowering intelligence with the panel earlier. So we'll touch on that as well. And I think a fourth consideration is really how to understand and how to properly do your integration. And last, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end at launch day. I think that's the beauty of digital marketing or marketing in general, is that the work only starts on day one and it will continue on a day-to-day basis, because equally optimization is a beauty and a curse. So these are the things I want to impart throughout my next 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So for the first point is that again, when I first encountered CDP, and this was way back almost 2 years ago, when the Lemnis team started their credentials presentation, their product presentation. And okay, so Subra, is it an automation tool? Is it a marketing automation tool? No. Okay, so is it a CRM tool? Because you're saying it essentially provides a single customer view, and the answer was no. So what is it? Needless to say, I couldn't really put my finger on it. So what is it? An LMS? What is it? So in its own sense, it's its own best of breed platform, which is a customer data platform. And it took a series of meetings, to be honest, mixed with own readings, things I had to read on my own. Then I fully understood what it really does and what it doesn't do, and how it can potentially maximize the things that we've already invested on in terms of marketing technology, but in general in terms of content marketing as well. So for me, and this is what really helped me understood it after meeting a lot of sessions, doing a lot of sessions with the Lemnis team, is that okay? So it serves like a brain, in the sense that the brain doesn't actually do the actual activity, like walking or talking or eating, but what it does, it actually orchestrates. It tells the nerve endings, it tells the different parts of your body, oh, this is the feedback that we got, this is what you'll do. So when I threw that concept to the team and all the working team, they said, okay, so that's how a CDP actually performs. And with that analogy, it really helped me understand the two sides of the CDP. On the left side, you have to consider the data input, the things that you feed it into, which is equally important as the things on the right side, which we'll talk about. You can be talking about things that you already know about your customer, or even your leads, such as first party, the data that you know about, that you get from your partners, co-brands, or even third health partners that you work with, like maybe for insurance, health and wellness. Is it medical partners, or for banking, is it lifestyle brands that you work with, or merchants, right? But at the same time, you can also complement it with third party providers, and we can go all day with and talk about all the providers that we can get. But at the same time, these aren't you can look at it at lens of offline data, things that you don't have on the cloud, or you don't have on a website or an application, and data that you know about your customers online. And we know, even before the discussion of a CDP, we know that all of these data points are equally empowering. Again, the ultimate goal at the end of the day is always data-driven marketing as a marketer, right? But like said earlier, it's really about how do I integrate all of these things. After finding out where all of these things are, considering your data governance maturity, how do I make sense out of it? And that's where the brain or the CDP comes in, because the CDP actually ingests all of these data points. But at the same time, aside from just serving a consolidation, imagining all your Excel files combined into just one master file, it actually profiles, it segments. Since it's able to ingest all of these data points, you are enriched with more data, but more than that, actually integrated data. That I know about my customers offline. Now I can already know things and complement it with things I know about them online into just one picture. And it doesn't end there, in that sense it's really really exciting and powerful. But as marketers, where we really get the most out of it, where we drive our KPIs and move the needle, is actually the activation. How do I make sense? How do I maximize this new gold that I've unearthed with a CDP or with a brain? And the beauty of a CDP, and most CDP delivers this, and such as Lemnis, is that it has its own built-in marketing automation feature, wherein it can create, out of these segments that it created, it can create campaigns, it can help you put in business rules, things that you can say, next best content, next best offer, next best product, across select channels that you also integrate it with. Again, similarly like a brain. So you can talk about personalized experience on a website, notifications, emails, SMS, or even throw back the data to your call center to empower your customer service representatives about the things that you know about your customers online and offline, or even actually your chatbot. So again, the name of the game in terms of making sure that it's an end-to-end is really integration, which we'll talk about later on. It's not just a one-way street. It doesn't just go left to right as seen here. The beauty of the data and the flow is that it will be a cycle. The things that you pick up, the engagements that you pick up from these channels, you can feed it back, or it's actually fed in back into the CDP, and you can empower and enrich the things again that you have on the left side. So you can really imagine it like a brain serving that cycle of data input to ingestion, profiling, segmentation, and ultimately until output or activating your campaigns. And let's take a step back on the different types of CDP that actually provides. It perfectly sits well on this diagram, right? There are CDP providers that actually focus on the left side, which is really collecting and integrating the data. That's called data CDP. There are CDPs that actually provide the two steps, which is ingesting it, profiling and segmenting it, and creating all of these different types of segments that you can use later on. But it stops there. But essentially, what Lemnes as a CDP does, it caters it end to end. It inputs, ingests, profile segments, and actually activates it. And technically, you can call it as a campaign CDP. And again, depending on the maturity, depending on the pieces that you have into your marketing picture, you'll have to decide which ones do you need. Is it just a best of breed of certain offering, or do you want something all in one? Next point is, let's say you've already understood, okay, this is how the CDP works. I want to use the analogy that Miko said, which is a brain. Okay, clear. We're all on board. It's something that I can afford in terms of time, talent, and money. Now, how do I choose which one I want to try it with? And again, most of the providers that you might talk to are open to POC. So, how do I really identify how will I use it first? And truth be told, this is one piece of the journey where we really took our time. Again, I think we had a workshop, and then after the workshop, oh no, it's not gonna work. After a whole day workshop, we looked at the use case. Nope, it's not gonna work. We threw it out the window, and then we created a new use case, and then lo and behold, we finalized the use cases that we want to do after 3 to 5, 6 months. And I'm not saying that that's the case for everyone. Again, hopefully the notes that I have will help you launch sooner than how we did it before, but I'm just being honest on how we actually approached it. And I realized, again, as a note from the battlefield, is that look at your north star. North star as a starting point. Then from there, you can actually prioritize using your use cases. Gigi mentioned earlier about a good goal setting framework that I think a lot of digital natives have learned to embrace and really advocate within their company. Some of the incumbents are a little bit late in the game, but I think this will really help. It's about the OKRs, or objective and key results, which will really help you identify what's the vision, what's the needle that needs to be moved by end of year, by by end of quarter. What are the things that we really have to prioritize, the vital few, and it serves as a good starting point to select your use case, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be doing something that won't really actually make an impact to the company's strategic goals, right? So, what better way to actually convince the management team that, hey, we need to invest in a CDP by actually showing them impact, immediate impact on the things that you want to drive on a long term basis. Yeah. So, after you pin down your OKRs, or the OKR that you want to drive, then you can actually dig deeper into the specific use cases across the funnel. You can talk about um, lookalike targeting, or providing the next best content, or doing a personalization for first time visitors, at the top of the funnel, or maybe in the middle, you'll talk about driving lead generation, totally new lead generation, or do you want to retarget those fallout, or you want to capture additional lead gens from those exiting the site or your application, for perhaps. And then lower, assisting your distribution channel. Do you want to talk about assignment? Do you want to empower your distribution or your sales force with additional customer data that the CDP actually ingests? Or maybe optimize how you do your conversion rates on your platform or your last mile delivery, right? And right before, the tip of the top funnel is that the CDP can also help in terms of driving app or portal registrations, utilization, or even onboarding new customers. So again, all of these things are sexy, all of these things are exciting, but if these things do not ladder up back to the OKR that your company is actually driving, then you wouldn't really get the buy-in that you want. And even not even below the funnel, even for existing customers, the CDP actually brings in a value as well. Again, earlier I mentioned that you can connect it back to your chatbot for after sales, for an omni-channel experience, or you can personalize the experience on the app or the portal, or even just in the nurturing communications that you do across email, or even first party ads that you do in social display, video, etc. And of course, you want to drive more upsell, resell, and really repurchase for your existing customers, which is naturally more efficient. So again, the CDP really empowers us to do a next best offer, drive these things on a referral and an upsell basis. So in no way this is a whole picture of the different use cases you can explore, but the main point here in this second tip is really look at your North Star. What is your vision? What's your company's OKRs for the year? How can you help? And assuming that you've already understood where the CDP really brings in value, then you're on the right track. You're guided with your North Star to select, prioritize the use case that you want. Now, the third point is with the use cases pinned down, you already know, okay, I want to drive, maybe awareness, I want to drive consideration, I want to drive lead generation, or I want to provide an omni-channel personalized experience for my customers. Now you have a direction. And the finish line, you can already imagine the finish line. This is where I want to go. After the use case duration, or maybe after the POC duration, this is where I want to land at, right? The next critical discussion you have to tackle is really to understand where the data is. And again, this is another very critical part of the discussion, because now you have to not only put on your marketer's hat, like what Eugene said earlier, not all marketers are, very mature in terms of understanding where the data is and how the data is collected and how powerful the data is. Now you have to put on that hat as well. But you're not alone. At the end of the day, you can work with the teams that you have, and it's understanding essentially where the data is vis-a-vis your entire tech landscape of your company. And now that's really a rabbit hole of discussions, right? So the equal challenge really is, how do you understand where the data is? What is it? What is it all about? Like what Ram mentioned earlier, how can you maximize this data? How can you democratize this data? Subra also mentioned it earlier. How do you maximize this intelligence into empowering your marketing, essentially data-driven marketing? And depending on your organization's maturity on data governance, you know, how you build and architect your tech stack and your data availability, a lot of factors can come into play. And some of the key questions I had, looking back, I've added it here, and hopefully it will help you identify it. Because the name of the game in terms of identifying where the data is really literally understanding the nature of the data and where it actually sits. Right? Where is the data located? Is it readily available? Is it something that I can get? Let's say we decide to launch the POC or launch the CDP from X days from now. Is it readily available? Is it clean? I think these are fundamental questions that you have to ask, and you'll be surprised that incumbents and equally sometimes digital natives have different levels of maturity, right, in terms of that, um, of data handling. Second, what are the minimum data fields you need? The pitfall of common marketers is that, okay, let's put in all the data into the CDP, but we only will use 10% of it. From putting on a risk hat, that's really risky. Being in insurance, being in the business of risks, that's something that you really have to think about, because if you're not going to maximize the 90% of the data that you input on the CDP, why are you going to put it in? The rule of thumb is really just maximize, yes, the data fields that you need, but actually use it. Don't just leave it hanging or just sitting in the CDP. Otherwise, it can be a risk, not only a risk of not maximizing your investment, but potentially a bigger risk in terms of data privacy, right? Third is that, what is the unique identifier across sources? Yes, CDP seems like a magic tool, but it cannot rely on its own to ingest all of these data points we've mentioned earlier. You need to tell and guide the CDP what would be unique across all platforms. Do you assign a unique ID, a number, a code, or maybe is the email addresses unique across all of these data points, or maybe account numbers? So what is that unique identifier that you can anchor on to ingest all of these data points? And fourth, some things that you also have to ask your provider is in terms of security and risk compliance. I think most of the attendees here today most maybe on the retail side or maybe on the financial services side, but equally security and risk compliance are things that's very talked about right now, depending on how your regulation is worked on. Okay, so that is the third point. You need to understand how to maneuver through your data and tech landscape. I'm not saying become someone from IT. I myself, I don't have an IT background. I started from advertising. So I rely on the teams that I work with to be able to maneuver this, going into the CDP integration. Which brings me to the next point about integration. The first time I heard about it, oh, it's simple as connecting. Connecting systems. I want to connect system A with system B with system C. But I realized it's actually beyond that. And I keep hearing these questions, when ever since we started meeting about the CDP, 1.5 years ago. And up to now, it's still being popped out in the meetings that we still have. No? Because integration behind the scenes actually tackle or affects or impacts a lot of things on how you will deliver the CDP, how you will deliver the campaigns that you will do. Yeah. So you have transfer, activation, etc. So when you say transfer, some things that I've heard from the meeting. Okay, what is the data frequency? What is the flow frequency? How often do you need the data actually flowed into the CDP and back as a cycle? And do you need it real time? How do you need it transferred? Is it through an API or just a flat file or just implementing tags and JavaScripts on their site or in your application? Activation, is your API readily available? You'd be surprised. a lot of incumbents actually are still just starting that journey into making sure that they are openly connected to different systems, not only within the company but even external parties such as a CDP. So those things, those critical questions you have to ask with to your IT team. If not, how soon can you go live? How long will it take for the back end developers to actually provide that for us? Enrichment. What additional data can you complement about what you already know? Obviously, as brand owners in the audience today, you have your own rich data that you have about your customers, but it doesn't stop there. What are the other things that you want to feed into and complement into your data? Again, integration also comes into play. Optimization. If I do a specific thing on the site or in the app, how often and how soon will the changes actually reflect? And this equally is a factor into how to make sure that your campaigns will actually perform better. And my favorite is really attribution. How would you say that the condition that you've set, the rules that you've set, the call to action that you've set is successful? And can you identify it real time? Like if a customer clicks a particular button on a channel campaign or an engagement campaign that you've put in, will the feedback, will the report be reflected on the database or in the system real time? And how soon will Lemnis will or the CDP will actually find out that it happened so? Because otherwise, if you don't have that attribution, that success criteria, you won't really see the impact immediately of your CDP campaigns that you're running. Next, this is a credo that I really like to believe that has actually guided me thus far and continue to be a personal advocacy of mine. You know, you always have to advocate that you're always in beta mode. You're always in an experiment mindset and really embracing a growth mindset. Earlier, I mentioned that optimization and digital marketing is equally a beauty of it, but at the same time a curse, and it will never be perfect. You know, I'll admit it to you, it will never be perfect at the first time. In fact, Voltaire said that perfect is the enemy of good. It's better that you get things going in a not so perfect environment or setup versus wait for the perfect time. That's why there's so much discussions on being agile in general, right? And when you talk about digital marketing, optimization is another name of the game, and that's something that I always tell my students as well when I do my training programs is that don't be pressured to make it perfect. You know, your media plan, your content plan, your campaign plan, it won't be perfect from the get go. What's more important is actually you optimize it. And that's the same advocacy that we embraced when we started running our CDP. And a particular process or framework that I encountered um, in a book that I read really helped me to do that. You know, maybe some of you are familiar with the growth hacking process, wherein you analyze, you analyze, analyze and identify the learnings on specific metrics that matter. Again, going back to the OKRs, and then you enlist ideas, you know, and sustain that rich and steady pool of experiments that you want to drive at, and then prioritize which ones would actually work best using different prioritization framework like ICE or impact, confidence, and ease, cost benefit analysis, or even just an action priority matrix. So to identify which of the ideas should I do or test now, and then eventually build a team that really encourages working towards testing more and in high tempo and high frequency and high sprints, right? In no way, don't get me wrong, in no way we don't have a growth hacking team in AIA Film Life, but this framework really helped us a lot in realizing that there will always be room for experiments. I like Eugene's point earlier when he talked about, you know, a lot of marketers tend to really just remain stagnant, you know, static. But I think um, a good skill and a good approach for marketers right now is actually having an experiment mindset or a growth mindset. And I think this framework will help. And In the same vein, this thing I've learned because I've really embraced this experiment mindset. So a habit that I've developed a few years back is continuously learning, not only teaching but continuously learning. So there's so many books about growth hacking. There's so many books about data-driven marketing or experimentation mindset, and I've just took a screenshot on Google of the things that you can search for when you enter growth hacking, right? And I guess the importance of optimization, aside from realizing that perfect is the enemy of good, is that 1% change over time, when you compound it, it actually makes a bigger impact. So you don't have to also pressure yourself. Okay, I do this test, um, like A/B testing, testing send times, frequency capping, testing different channels, or even audience targeting. It doesn't have to be a big change from the get go. That 1% change, as long as you do it regularly and consistently, that will compound to a bigger impact by the end of the campaign. Yeah. So some books that maybe you want to look into later on. So in recap and in summary, these are the 5 points I've talked about earlier. Understanding what a CDP is or what it is not. Is it a CRM? Is it an LMS? Is it a marketing automation tool? No. How to identify and prioritize the use case that you want to use, identifying and maneuvering where the data is, understanding integration, and once you've already launched, making sure that you have an experimentation mindset and really embrace the power of optimization. And I guess if you are able to pin these downs, these down when you implement your CDP, is that you will really be able to maximize your investment. At the end of the day, I want to caution you that a CDP is essentially just a tool. The same way that you have a tool at home like a hammer and a nail, it's supposed to do one thing, but it always depends on how you'll use it, right? So if you're able to pin down these basic things and you work with your provider, work with your team internally, then you'll really maximize what the CDP does. Essentially, it is a personalization engine, okay, that is very results oriented, grounded on data, with real time capability, and can deliver growth for you. Okay. And again, thank you, Lemnis team. This has been great. In fact, aside from sharing this short playbook I've prepared, this also allowed me to reflect on the journey we've had for more than 1.5 years now. And to quote John Dewey, he said, "We actually do not learn experience outright. We remember that we learn from experience. No, actually, we learn from reflecting on the experience that we have." And just to add in a few more critical questions to ask, maybe additional notes you want to write down or get a screenshot of, is understanding all of these questions and asking these critical questions not only with your provider but with your partners internally. What's that most pressing issue that you need addressed? Again, your OKR. Is your use case maximizing the power of CDP? Truth be told, a lot of use cases we threw in the workshop and threw in the brainstorming sessions didn't really need a CDP. We could do it without a CDP. We could do it without Lemnesk. Again, that's not really leveraging the investment that you have. How does the CDP actually fit in the bigger marketing picture? It should be, one of the critical pieces that you put into that jigsaw puzzle. What are the inherent risks and controls you have in place to ensure that data integrity, data privacy, all of these breaches are actually avoided? And of course, the most important is, what's the picture of success? How do you see picture after this POC or after your campaign? Okay, and with that, thank you. If you want to connect, just add me in LinkedIn, or you can also scan this QR code.
Wonderful, wonderful. Miko, thank you so much. That was an incredible session. And I think for folks listening in, I'm sure it was super insightful for you as well. And I hope that if you're thinking of a CDP for your organization, you will take away, I think, a lot of valuable learnings from today's session. So Miko, once again, thanks a lot for taking the time out today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Subran. Thanks for the team.